Hi, this is Steve with Thresher Media Group. Welcome to When You're Ready to Listen. This podcast is dedicated to exploring the truth about God, things you may not have understood, may not have been taught, or quite frankly, had a very hard time believing. And since our entire relationship with God rests on believing, it is important we learn how to separate the truth from the many lies and fictions that abound within the religion of Christianity. So when you're ready to listen, tune in and discover a pathway to freedom, encouragement, life, and hope. A couple of quick reminders. Thresher Media Group is a 501c3 public charity, and we rely entirely on donations from our listeners. If the Spirit leads you, please support this ministry. It's easy to do. Just go to the website, threshermediagroup.com, and click the Donate tab in the header. I would also encourage you to go to Amazon and pick up a copy of Liberating the Book of Revelation, Returning to the Source of the Message. This book is intended to help us all know what the Spirit said and how He said it. This book is focused not on interpreting the book of Revelation, that's what this podcast is for, but on accurately representing the book of Revelation in the manner in which the Spirit originally spoke it to John. It is available in all formats, hardback, paperback, ebook format, and as an audible. In our last podcast, we dove deep into the historical roots of this mystery Babylon and discovered how the exaltation of man and the worship of the spiritual powers in the heavens came to be prevalent on the earth. In effect, the great harlot developed a system where men believed that they could be the bridge connecting mankind and the heavenly realm. This commenced a precedent that was established in Babylon, in the city of Babel, and has been followed throughout the ages of mankind. Let's pick up where we left off. Episode 41, Revelation 17, verses 5 through 6. The woman who rides the beast. The name on her forehead. Now having in her hand a gold cup, now being full of abominations and of the unclean things of her immorality, and on her forehead a name caused to being written, Mystery Babylon, the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. As we studied in our last podcast, historically, Babylon was important politically, as it had once been the central rallying place of humanity and remained a place of importance for thousands of years. But it was also of immense spiritual importance. It was in this region that mankind attempted to build unto themselves a symbol of human glory, a bridge between God and man. And when it comes to the spiritual, there are layers upon layers to discover, all of which will help us understand more fully the mystery of the harlot's name. We must, however, access more non-biblical history. Semiramis, mother of harlots. Nimrod, that great and mighty hunter who ruled over humanity, had a wife named Semiramis. And she provides for us not just a type, but our human avatar of the woman who rides the beast. Nimrod and Semiramis met when Nimrod was on a conquest to consolidate the world's first empire, probably about 1,000 years after the flood. It is said that she was an innkeeper of a brothel. She was a harlot, which clearly ties into the reference of our woman, Babylon the Great, being a harlot. Semiramis is a human avatar of the harlot. Semiramis rose to power on the coattails of Nimrod. She rides the beast. And she established the first religion aimed at supporting his rule and maintaining their collective power. There were three major tenets to her religion. Number one, the corruption of ancient astronomy, using so-called mysterious or esoteric knowledge of the universe, which of course only she understood. Number two, the worship of the powers of the universe, essentially the angelic hosts or the demonic spirits. And three, complete devotion to the king, something which ultimately evolved into emperor worship during the time of the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar and later during the Roman Empire. First, the religion she founded was based on a corruption of the practice of astronomy that was common to Noah's ancestors. In the stars and constellations, Noah's ancestors saw the story of Satan's rebellion, the war in heaven, the fall of Adam and Eve, as well as Satan's subversion of mankind. The constellations even told the story of one who would come and remove the curse of sin, the one who would reign as Lord, as well as the final subjugation of all things to him. The corruption of this ancient astronomy came when Semiramis altered the story and claimed that a great dragon was the true Lord of the universe. The dragon's reign, however, was restrained or held back by another power, a power that would one day be moved out of the way by a divine deliverer. This is consistent with the hope expressed by the kings of the earth, those spiritual rulers in Psalms 2, verses 2 through 3. The kings of the earth take their stand, and the rulers take counsel against Yahweh and against his anointed, which means the Christ, saying, "Let us tear their fetters apart and cast away their cords from us." In Semiramis' depiction, the serpent created man in his present fallen state, but promised that a child, a deliverer, would be born of a divine mother. This child would supplant this restraining power, those fetters, and return complete rulership of the earth to the serpent. This entire construct was tied to the constellations under the guise of her unique ability to uncover the hidden, mysterious, and esoteric knowledge of the universe. Second, in this religious cult, Semiramis led her followers into the worship of the heavenly host, which, as we have learned, was just a mask for worshiping the dragon, Satan, the seven heads, the kings of the earth, and all their demonic legions. Third, she demanded that the people worship the king, the emperor, as the bridge to those in the heavenly realms. She installed a hierarchy of priests and priestesses whose job it was to lead the people in worship, since it was only the priests and priestesses, like Semiramis, who had the ability to understand the esoteric or mysterious knowledge of the universe. Its rites of worship were secret, a mystery, as in the name of the harlot, and only the initiated were permitted to know its enigmas. This system seemed to work for both Nimrod and Semiramis until one day she showed up pregnant with an illegitimate child. The king was furious. He threatened her with dethronement and to expose her harlot origins. This, of course, was something Semiramis would not abide. Semiramis devised a devilish plot to overthrow Nimrod. At the New Year's celebration, she had her followers, who were apparently tripped out on hallucinogenic drugs, sacrifice Nimrod instead of a lamb. Nimrod was torn from limb to limb while he was still alive. Can you imagine the depth of her own drive for self-preservation? Semiramis claimed that by his sacrifice, Nimrod would become a god. She then installed her son as the king and named him Tamuz, which in the Babylonian language became Damuzi, which was later translated into Hebrew as Tamuz, and in Greek, Adonis. With Tamuz being an infant, Semiramis ruled in his stead as absolute monarch. As an avatar for the harlot, she said in her heart, "I sit as queen, and I am not a widow and will never see mourning." Eventually, there arose those who challenged her ability to rule, since she was not a man. Semiramis and the priesthood went to war to protect her kingdom. She built fortresses, walls, and gates around Babylon for her protection. In so doing, she consolidated control over the kingdom. Semiramis eventually declared that Tamuz was a god, and that he was the product of a miraculous conception. She said that Tamuz was the fulfillment of the promise which was given to Eve, that the seed of the woman would be the promised deliverer. And if Tamuz was a god, that meant she had to be a goddess. She was soon deified as the Queen of Heaven, pictured in the constellation Cassiopeia. This was a corruption of ancient astronomy, as Noah's ancestors had depicted Cassiopeia as a corporate representation of the faithful who would be enthroned with Yahweh after the end of the age. The people then lifted up and worshiped Tamuz as a god. This is the same Tamuz who was blatantly worshipped with tears and mourning by the women of Israel. Semiramis' scheme introduced the world to the mystery of the mother and child, a form of messianic idolatry that is older than almost any other known to man. This form of idolatry, which deified the mother of the child, spread from Babylon all throughout the world. The images were the same, just the names were different. In Phoenicia, it was Ashtoreth and Tamuz. In Egypt, Isis and Horus. In Greece, Aphrodite and Eros. In Italy, Venus and Cupid. And eventually in Rome and throughout the world, Mary, the Queen of Heaven, and the baby Jesus. When Semiramis' son became of age and wanted the throne, she plotted to kill him in the same manner as she did Nimrod. Having become aware of her scheming and treachery, Tamuz killed his mother and put down any priestly uprising, although history renders various alternate endings to her life. Tamuz then purged the kingdom of those who would not vow allegiance to him. Semiramis died after reigning as Queen of Babylon for 102 years. However, this Babylonian cult which Semiramis founded, which centered on the worship of the Queen of Heaven and the child, laid the groundwork for all the pagan and religious systems of old, as well as many that are still around today. Her cult became the model behind every goddess and female cult figure in the ancient and modern worlds, and it was a twisted, distorted ripoff of what would be the true messianic story of mother and child. It should not be surprising that many of the legends surrounding Tamuz still have a big impact on religion today. It was said that Tamuz was slain by a wild boar and afterwards brought back to life, setting the stage for another satanic ripoff, creating the typology for a resurrection of the false deliverer, the one who had been being butchered and disposed of in the abyss, but now lives. Moreover, there are connections to Tamuz and his mysterious religion with the Easter egg, the Christmas tree, the Yule log, as well as the cross, which was sacred to him, as the cross symbolized the first letter of his name. It is even speculated that the worship of Baal, which plagued the Israelites, is also related to the worship of Tamuz. Moving up in history, during the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon, this mystery religion still had its priests and wise men who were referred to as the Magi, the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers. The Jewish prophet Daniel was eventually placed in charge of all the Magi. It seems, however, that he purposely undid much of what Semiramis had corrupted in terms of the story of redemption pictured in those constellations, especially regarding the mother and child motif. We became aware of the unraveling of her narrative much later when the kings of the East, the Magi, saw the star in the heavens and came to Israel in search of the newborn King of the Jews that they may worship. The mystery spreads. After the Medes and the Persians took over Babylon in 539 BC, they discouraged the continuation of the mystery religions of Babylon, and many of its priests fled for their lives. Some of these priests landed in Pergamum, or Pergamos. This just happens to be where Satan established his throne on the earth. Thus, it should be no wonder to us that the mysterious practices of the Babylonian priests somehow just migrated to this town. Like natures, tend to attract one another. Now the story gets even more interesting. When these priests came to Pergamum, they wore crowns in the shape of a fish head, which bore the words, "Keeper of the Bridge," symbolic of their role being the bridge between man and God, which in their case was between man and Satan. The heresy, which had its genesis in Babel with Nimrod, continued to push forward with its corrupting influence. The king of Pergamum, Attalus, adopted the title and then some. He called himself the greatest bridge maker, which later in Latin was translated as Pontiff Maximus. Subsequently, this title was given to the emperors of Rome, which is how it ultimately found its way to the Roman Catholic Church and became the title of the popes. Thus, it should be no surprise that the pope wears a hat in the shape of a fish head, like the priests of Babylon and Pergamum. It is also nothing short of mind-blowing that certain ancient artifacts or idols of Chemosh, the destroyer, the spirit who becomes the beast, also depicts him wearing the same fish hat. Coincidence? I think not. It's all one big interconnected story. Attalus, however, had no male son. So upon his death, he bequeathed all of Pergamum to Rome. And it was Julius Caesar who first adopted this title, which continued to be passed down to other Roman emperors who used the Latin title Pontifex Maximus, which again in Latin means greatest bridge maker or major keeper of the bridge. Eventually, this title was used by the Bishop of Rome, and we know the rest of the story, as the Catholic priesthood still today believes they bridge the gap between God and man. When the teachers of the Babylonian mystery religion later moved from Pergamum to Rome, they were influential in paganizing Christianity, and they became the source of so many called religious rites or mysteries, which have crept into ritualistic churches. The system of worship spread rapidly all throughout Christendom, such that even today, many of the secret rites which originated in Babylon has blended into practice, liturgy, and various methods of worship within the church, including the sacramental ritual, the professionalism of the priesthood, baptismal cleansing of sin, annual festivals, the dates upon which festivals are celebrated, and so on. Babylon is the ultimate symbol of religious apostasy, the mother of all harlots. This historical background should help us understand why the great city of religious apostasy, where our Lord was crucified and where his two witnesses are sacrificed, is called Babylon the Great, and mystically Sodom and Egypt. Its impact on the world has been nothing but great, deviant, twisted, and oppressive. Fundamentally, the mystery religion of Babylon blends the roles of king and priest. It places all authority in the head of the state, who also rules as the head of the religion. It's a picture of absolute power, which corrupts absolutely. The mystery of Babylon the Great goes back to the beginning of false worship, from which all false systems of worship and abominations of the earth have come. All of this comes to full fruition with the man we call the Antichrist. He will rule the political and military constructs of his administration, and ultimately, he will rule the religions of the world. Like Tamuz, he will slay his Semiramis, this woman who rides the beast, the woman who brought him prominence. As a result, he will be exalted and worshipped as God, just like the spirit that will possess him is even now exalted, worshipped as God. Babylon the Great introduces the blasphemous substitution of idol worship for the worship of the one true living God. It introduces the worship of spirits, the hosts of heaven, the queen of heaven, the child, and it seduces the people of the world to worship the image of the beast. It does not take a lot of work to see how the seeds of Babylon the Great have wound up in every world religion, including Christendom, and every form of pagan spiritualism that exists. With this history as our background, the rest of her name makes sense. She is the mother of all harlots. Her roots begin with the harlot Semiramis, her human avatar, and her system of worship has been widely and generously prostituted all around the world. Just like a harlot, she is open to anyone who will have her. We know that without question, she infected Israel, and they too became worshipers of the harlot. They were always found prostituting themselves and worshiping foreign gods on every high hill and under every green tree, and they evenly, blatantly worshiped the Queen of Heaven. Jeremiah 2, verses 20 through 22. Long ago I broke the yoke that oppressed you and tore away the chains of your slavery, but still you said, I will not serve you. On every hill and under every green tree, you have prostituted yourselves by bowing down to idols. But I was the one who planted you, choosing a vine of the purest stock, the very best. How did you grow into this corrupt wild vine? No amount of soap or lye can make you clean. I still see the stain of your guilt. I, Yahweh Adonai, have spoken. Jeremiah 44, 24 through 27. Then Jeremiah said to all the people, including all the women, hear the word of Yahweh, all Judah who are in the land of Egypt. Thus says Yahweh Sabaoth, the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, as follows. As for you and your wives, you have spoken with your mouths and fulfill it with your hand, saying, we will certainly perform our vows that we have vowed to burn sacrifices to the Queen of Heaven and pour out drink offerings to her. Go ahead and confirm your vows and certainly perform your vows. Nevertheless, hear the word of Yahweh. All Judah who are living in the land of Egypt, behold, I've sworn by my great name, says Yahweh, never shall my name be invoked by the mouth of any man of Judah in all the land of Egypt, saying, as Yahweh God lives. In Jeremiah, Israel is also called a brazen prostitute that is completely shameless, whose clothing is stained with the blood of the innocent and the poor. She too dresses in scarlet and decorates herself in ornaments of gold. And as with the harlot, Israel's lovers will ultimately despise her and seek her life. Israel will suffer the same fate as their queen. Apostate Israel looks like this ancient mother of harlots. They follow in her footsteps. As a result, Israel's history follows the same pattern of bloodshed and ultimate betrayal. Accordingly, Israel serves a picture within a picture of what this woman who rides the beast and this woman's influence has not just been in Israel, but all around the world. The cup which she holds out is golden, and it is seductive, and it is paraded before the inhabitants of the world to drink. But in that cup is a concoction of abomination, uncleanness, and spiritual apostasy. This prostitute has infiltrated all the various systems of worship in the world. It has many different faces, but one mother. Her likeness is seen clearly in paganism, Hinduism, Mohammedanism, papalism, in the Orthodox branches of Christianity, and in the various forms of legalism and self-righteousness which afflict Protestant and evangelical Christianity. She is found everywhere. Spiritual apostasy has many different faces, but one mother. Earth's abominations. And on her forehead a name caused to being written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. Throughout the Codex, this Greek word translated as abominations, though rooted in the word stink, is tied to that which is detestable or idolatrous. And that is why the abomination of desolation is the ultimate form of idolatry, the claim by the beast that he is God. This spirit or apostasy is the mother who has borne forth these abominations or the idolatry of the entire earth. She is no regional player. She sits on many waters and functions globally. Sometimes these abominations are blatant and obvious, and other times it's all far more surreptitious. For instance, her work within Christianity, specifically Protestant and evangelical Christianity, largely hidden from the eyes of its followers. Because these groups tend to preach salvation by grace, they think that they have got it right, and everyone else are the apostates. But that is naive, and they simply do not understand that they too have been drinking from the harlot's cup. Remember, out of the 7 churches to whom Jesus wrote, only 2, Smyrna and Philadelphia, had either not fallen into apostasy or were not on a fast path toward apostasy. In fact, the 2 churches, Ephesus and Sardis, whose reputation held them up as being the most orthodox and on fire for the Lord, were the 2 who had fallen or had literally been cut off from Christ. The irony is painful. The poison in her cup of apostasy is the belief that man can be good, should be good, and through the work of his hands can achieve his place amongst the holy ones and be the ladder or the bridge connecting man to the heavenly realms. In Christianity, this is all about what we can do, should do, and must do to stop sinning. It's all another version of the exaltation of the me, our own little Christian version of the abomination of desolation that has been accepted pretty much across the board. The professionals. In every religious circle, there are the professionals who manage the abominations and all the expectations that go along with their own expression of idolatry. These professionals tend to function as the bridge or the ladder, connecting the layperson, the parishioners, the flock, to God. Sometimes this is blatant, as in the practice of Orthodoxy and Catholicism, where the priest literally operates as the intercessor between the parishioners and God. At other times, it's more subtle, as with those in evangelical Christianity, who think their lives will shift, their blessings will come, or the demons will flee if the pastor prays for them, as if the pastor has some special juju or special relationship with God that they do not have. In either scenario, the people of God have yielded their own authority in God to another. It's all just a recapitulation of the ways of the Nicolaitans, which God hates. And what stems from this system of professionals is the structural corruption that derives from the abuse of power by those who, in the name of Almighty God, wield authority and control over the peoples. Over and over throughout the years, this religious system results in one group of professionals oppressing and dominating the masses in both overt and subtle ways. As we will discover in Revelation 18, this has resulted in all manner of evil done in the name of God, including murder, torture, persecution, incarceration, immorality, and sacrifice. It has all been done in the name of God and justified by the spiritual authority granted those professionals, the clerics, priests, priestesses, bishops, imams, pastors, teachers, and other religious leaders, drunk with the blood of the saints. And I saw the woman now being drunk with the blood of the holy ones and with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. There are two fundamental characteristics that are common to every form of religion and spiritual practice everywhere on the earth. Number one, the belief that holy men and women can be good enough and should be good enough to be an effective bridge between man and God. And number two, the lack of tolerance for the true bondservants of God. As such, this woman is even now continually inebriated with the blood of the holy ones, both the Old Testament and the New Testament faithful, and with the blood of the bondservants of Jesus Christ who are martyred from both the Jewish and Gentile believers, the two witnesses. The faithful of God, true believers, have always been the target of the beast's anger, hatred, violence, persecution, murder, and slaughter. After all, his color is scarlet, and his color defines his nature. Whereas the woman who rides the beast makes a deliberate choice to be clothed in scarlet, to drape herself in the sacrifices of God's people. As such, this woman's religion, both pagan forms as well as all forms of Christendom, have been the vehicle for much of the beast's persecution against true believers. Ancient Babylon and the harlot compared. The Codex ties ancient Babylon directly to the harlot, Babylon the Great. In so doing, the Spirit wants to ensure that we do not miss the message or the intensity of the warning. Ancient Babylon, Babylon the Great. In the transcript, there is a chart that compares these two systems, ancient Babylon and Babylon the Great. I encourage you to go to the website, threshermediagroup.com, and you'll be able to print off the transcript. We will be comparing scriptures side by side that deal with ancient Babylon and the correlating passage that deals with mystery Babylon, Babylon the Great. O you who dwell by many waters, Jeremiah 51:13. The great harlot who sits on many waters, Revelation 17:1. Babylon has been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, intoxicating all the earth. The nations have drunk of her wine, therefore the nations are going mad, Jeremiah 51:7. Having in her hand a golden cup, Revelation 17:4, with whom the kings of the earth committed immorality, and those who dwell on the earth were made drunk with the wine of her immorality, Revelation 17:2. Suddenly Babylon has fallen and been broken, Jeremiah 51:8. Fell is Babylon the Great, Revelation 14:8. I will be a queen forever. I will not sit as a widow or know the loss of children, Isaiah 47, verses 7 and 8. I sit as queen. I am not a widow and will never see mourning, Revelation 18:7. Come forth from her midst, my people, Jeremiah 51:45. You are commanded to come out of her, my people, Revelation 18:4. Then the heaven and the earth and all that is in them will shout for joy over Babylon, Jeremiah 51:48. You are commanded to now be caused to rejoice over her, O heaven, and you holy ones, and apostles and prophets, for God has pronounced judgment for you against her. Revelation 18:20. Like a stone thrown into the Euphrates, Babylon shall sink down and not rise again because of the calamity I'm going to bring down on her. Jeremiah 51:64. Like a great millstone thrown into the sea, so will Babylon, the great city, be thrown down with violence and will not be found any longer. Revelation 18:21. Beginning with the murder of Abel by Cain, the blood of the faithful has been spilled, and this bloodshed has continued to flow all over the world all throughout time. This bloodshed is the combined work of Satan, the destroyer, the beast with the 7 heads, all the beast's collaborators, not just one human institution, and all in both the seen and unseen realms who are ruled and dominated by this harlot, indulging in her abominations. The persecution of the holy ones, the true faithful of God, has always been a mark or an emblem of spiritual whoredom. It demonstrates alienation from the living God. And wherever in the earth such persecution finds its place and believers are afflicted, punished, tortured, and sacrificed because of their faith in Jesus Christ, it is the result of the same spirits that mobilized Nimrod and Semiramis to defy God. The persecution of the saints of God is without question wholly demonic and rooted in Babylon. Understanding this background and connection with the harlot brings a lot more intensity to the opening of the 5th seal, where under the altar of God the souls of all those who had been martyred for the word of God called loudly to the Lord, saying, "How long, O Lord, Lord, holy, holy, and true, true, will you not now judge and now avenge our blood on those who are now dwelling on the earth?" The never-ending bloodshed at the hands of those drunk with the harlot's wine reminds us why the judgments are necessary. It will be God bringing justice to his people. It will be God bringing a reckoning to Nimrod, Semiramis, and to all the inhabitants of the world that joined their apostasy and persecuted and killed the faithful of God. There will be a day of comeuppance, and it will come without delay. Yahweh will make right or straight all that has been bent. He will judge righteously and redeem the lives of his people that were stolen by the beast and the woman who rides the beast, in all forms in which they have shown up throughout the ages. I'm glad you've tuned in and have been ready to listen. To get a free download of the full written transcript with all the scripture references footnoted, please go to threshermediagroup.com. That is THRESHER mediagroup.com. This is Steve with Thresher Media Group. When you're ready to listen, tune in.